Mr. President, it is true that we are in a process of negotiating and discussing on the Democratic side the amendments that will be offered, and yes, there will be amendments offered. Senator Boxer has been part of this effort, and I just left the phone with her. She is working now with her staff to come up with amendments that she believes will withstand any procedural challenge on the floor, and hopefully they'll be brought up soon. Senator Cantwell, who is the floor leader on our side on this particular measure, is also open. There's no question that we will be prepared to and offering amendments. We are trying to finalize the language at this point and the order that the amendments will be offered. We are working with the Republicans once we have our own set of amendments in place. There's no effort to obstruct. We had generally agreed that we wouldn't be voting today on amendments. It is possible before the end of the day that we'll have an agreement to move forward in terms of the introduction and debate on the amendments and the vote to occur perhaps next week. But that is still unresolved, and we are still talking about it. But what's interesting is to put this in perspective, because we're talking about this. Senate Bill 1, the very first bill that was offered by the new Republican majority in the United States Senate, a bill, as they say, to approve the Keystone XL Pipeline. The Republicans' highest priority, their number one bill, now that they have majority status in the Senate, is the approval of a pipeline project to benefit one company, a Canadian company, to create 35 permanent jobs. The highest priority of the Republican majority in the Senate is to debate and pass a bill to benefit a Canadian company to create 35 permanent jobs. This special interest, small ball effort is not a national economic or energy policy or a plan to make America energy independent. The Keystone XL Pipeline, sadly, is going to have a negative impact on the environment, not just of the United States, but literally of all adjoining countries. The tar sands that will be carried in this pipeline will increase the amount of pollution, greenhouse gas emissions. First, they're being mined in Canada, and later when they are refined. And we know this because tar sands are currently coming into the United States, Canadian tar sands, that are being processed at a refinery in Illinois, Wood River, Illinois. It's a refinery now owned by the Phillips Oil Company, and their refined product is distributed throughout the Midwest. So the Keystone XL Pipeline is not the first Canadian tar sands pipeline. We have one. And that existing pipeline, in the course of cleaning up Canadian tar sands into products that can be sold on the market, generates something called pet coke. Pet coke is the waste product, the dirty part of Canadian tar sands that need to be removed before they are viable petroleum products. If you don't believe that this pet coke is any danger, you need only come to the great city of Chicago, which I'm honored to represent. I visited the southeast side of Chicago. The British Petroleum Refinery at the end of Lake Michigan in the northern part of Indiana refines the Canadian tar sands and generates, as part of the refining process, literally hills of pet coke, this black, sooty, nasty product that they stack up not far from the refinery, but unfortunately, many times within the boundaries of the city of Chicago. Well, what impact does it have to have hills of pet coke in your neighborhood? When the wind blows, this nasty, dirty product blows all over the homes, the families, and the children that live in that neighborhood. I've seen it. I've visited mothers with small children who try to seal the windows of their homes because this pet coke can get through any crack and into their homes, leaving a sooty deposit around them. So for those who argue that these Canadian tar sands pose no environmental threat, come take a look at these pet coke hills. that are generated now by the process of refining this product. Additionally, the Keystone XL Pipeline doesn't move us away from the dangerous tipping point which we face when it comes to climate change and global warming. In fact, it's going to speed up the day of reckoning. Leading scientists warn us we're running out of time. If we do not, as a nation and as a world, accept the reality of what's happening to our environment, we're going to pay a heavy price. According to the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, at least half of the world's energy supply will need to come from low-carbon sources in the future: wind, solar, even nuclear, by 2050, if we're going to avoid catastrophic climate changes. That gives us barely 35 years to do something for our kids and grandkids. This Keystone bill does not even acknowledge that reality. Mr. President, I've come to the floor many times and offered the challenge which I'll renew today. I believe that the Republican Party of the United States of America, represented in the United States Senate, is the only major political party in the world today that denies global warming and climate change. It is the only major political party which refuses to accept the premise, well established in science, well established by our departments like the Department of Defense, that our activity as human beings on Earth is changing the world we live in, and not for the better. Now, one Republican pulled me aside off the floor after I'd made this challenge several times and said, "Durbin, you're wrong. There's actually a political party in Australia that denies global warming as well." Well, that may be true, but the fact that they have such little company when it comes to this position suggests that our Republicans are denying reality. This bill denies that reality as well. Now, if it's about jobs, let me suggest not only to the majority leader, but to the labor unions and others interested in creating American jobs, there are better alternatives in the energy sector. Solar power is already generating 3.4 million jobs in the United States. Remember, the Keystone XL Pipeline generates 35 permanent jobs and, according to some estimates, maybe 40,000 temporary supply jobs for the construction of the pipeline. But 35 permanent jobs from the Keystone XL Pipeline, while solar power is generating 3.4 million jobs in America. By the end of 2013, 24,000 of them created just that year. Jobs created in the solar industry at a growth rate of 20% over 2012. It's growth industry for clean, green jobs. In Illinois, 9 solar projects employ almost 4,000 workers. Solar isn't the only energy source we can invest in. Fuel cell technology doesn't get much attention, but supports 11,000 jobs versus 35 permanent jobs for the Keystone XL Pipeline. The U.S. Department of Energy estimates that with rapid increase in fuel cells, 180,000 new domestic jobs could be created by 2020, 685,000 by 2035. The International Renewable Energy Agency found renewable energy industry in the U.S. responsible for 625,000 direct and indirect jobs in solar, biofuel, wind, biomass, hydropower, and geothermal industries. That's a conservative estimate. So if you're interested in clean energy, if you want to do the right thing by our environment for our kids and grandkids, and you want to create American jobs, it isn't 35 jobs, which is the highest priority of the Senate Republican caucus. It's looking at alternative sources of energy, which will create jobs and not destroy the planet. The Keystone XL Pipeline will produce oil with a process that uses 17% more carbon than any conventional crude oils. That oil is going to be shipped, if the Republicans have their way, through a pipeline from Canada all the way to Texas, over nearly thousands of lakes and aquifers that Americans rely on for clean drinking water. After it reaches Port Arthur, Texas, the original plan, which I think is still the case, is it will be exported. So even the refined product is not going to be used here in America. So we ask our Republican colleagues, where's your plan to make sure America leads the world in creating good-paying green jobs for the future? Where's your plan to increase America's production of wind, solar, thermonuclear, cellulosic, and other forms of renewable energy? In fact, when it came to debating the extension of some tax benefits to these industries, many Republicans opposed it. They instead want to see us move toward things like the Keystone XL Pipeline. So, Mr. President, this is an important debate, and it's one that we ought to take in the context of the challenge our generation faces. We will either acknowledge the global environmental reality and deal with it, or we will have to answer to our children and grandchildren why we put the profits of one Canadian company, why we put 35 jobs ahead of a meaningful discussion about a national energy policy that is consistent with a clean and strong environment for years to come.